Put the bag on the hood and step away from the station doors." Officer Ryan Keller's voice cracked across the sidewalk so sharply that people stopped mid-stride, coffee cups paused near mouths, and the glass entrance of the Riverton Police Department seemed to hold its breath. The black woman in the charcoal coat did not flinch. She stood 3 feet from the front steps of the building, one hand resting on the strap of an old leather bag, rain mist gathering along the collar of her coat and the edges of her cream blouse. She looked at Keller, calm enough to make him angrier, and said, "You have no idea who you are putting your hands on." That sentence should have made him check. It should have made him ask her name. It should have made the younger officer beside him glance at the front desk, call inside, or look twice at the sealed folder visible near the top of her bag. But Keller had already decided what he saw. A black woman standing outside a police station before the morning briefing. A stranger who looked too composed. A person he believed needed to be controlled before she was understood. If stories about dignity, justice, and truth still matter to you, subscribe now, because what happens next is the kind of moment a whole city remembers. Her name was Evelyn Brooks, though Keller did not know it yet, and in less than 1 hour, the mayor was supposed to introduce her upstairs as the new chief of police. She had arrived early on purpose. Not in uniform. Not with an escort. Not with cameras or speeches or anyone clearing a path ahead of her. She wanted to see the department before it knew how to behave for her. She wanted to feel the building without ceremony, to watch the front desk, the patrol shift, the small habits people reveal when they think power is not watching. In her bag was a sealed appointment packet, a polished chief's badge she had not worn yet, and a folded photograph of her father in his old police uniform, standing beside a patrol car in 1989 with a smile that looked proud and tired at the same time. He had served 27 years and retired quietly, carrying stories he rarely told because pain, in his generation, was often treated like part of the uniform. Evelyn had promised herself she would not lead that way. She would not mistake silence for peace. Keller stepped closer, his dark navy uniform sharp under the gray morning light, his badge catching the flash of patrol lights from the cruiser parked at the curb. "I said put the bag down." Evelyn's eyes moved from his hand to his face. "Officer, I am asking you to contact the front office or call city personnel before this goes any further." His mouth twisted into a thin smile. Everybody has a story when they get caught where they should not be. Behind him, Officer Mark Ellison shifted his weight. He was younger, fair-haired, still carrying that nervous stiffness of someone who had learned the rules but not yet learned when courage had to interrupt them. His eyes dropped to Evelyn's bag, where the corner of a city envelope showed the official seal. He noticed it. Evelyn noticed him noticing it. Keller did not care. A few feet away, a woman holding a grocery tote slowed down and raised her phone without making it obvious. A delivery driver stopped beside his van. Through the police station glass, a receptionist looked up from her desk, first curious, then confused, then suddenly pale. Evelyn heard the low hum of traffic on the avenue, the squeak of wet brakes at the intersection, the soft hiss of rain on concrete. Every detail sharpened. Keller reached for her bag and moved it toward the patrol car hood with unnecessary force, sending the sealed folder sliding halfway out. The envelope landed against the wet metal, the mayor's office seal facing upward. Evelyn did not reach for it. She only looked through the glass doors behind him, where a large welcome banner hung inside the lobby, partially blocked by Keller's shoulder. Only 2 words were visible from where she stood: "Welcome, Chief." Keller followed her gaze and gave a short laugh, mistaking her stillness for fear. "Looking for someone to save you?" Evelyn turned her eyes back to his, and her voice dropped to something quieter than anger. "No, Officer Keller. I am looking at the department I am about to inherit." Evelyn did not raise her voice after she said it, and that made the sentence linger longer than Keller wanted. For half a second, the sidewalk became too quiet, as if everyone nearby had heard a door open somewhere deeper than the station lobby. Keller stared at her, then at the wet envelope on the patrol car hood, then back at her face. The words should have unsettled him. Instead, they offended him. Men like Keller did not fear being wrong as much as they feared being corrected in public, especially by someone they had already decided belonged beneath their authority. "You are about to inherit nothing but a charge for interfering," he said. His tone was lower now, controlled for the phones he knew were recording, but the anger had moved into his eyes. Evelyn looked past him to Officer Ellison, who still had not spoken. Officer Ellison, she said evenly, reading his nameplate, there is a city seal on that envelope. There is a personnel number on the appointment packet inside. There is also a front desk less than 20 feet behind you. Which of those facts are you choosing not to verify? Ellison's lips parted. He glanced at Keller, then toward the entrance, where the receptionist had risen from her chair and was pressing a hand to the glass. Her name was Denise Porter. Evelyn knew because she had spent the previous night reviewing staff rosters, complaint files, promotion histories, and transfer requests until nearly 2 in the morning. Denise had worked that desk for 14 years. Keller had 3 civilian complaints in 18 months, all marked unresolved. Ellison had been on patrol less than 2 years, with commendations for de-escalation and 1 note from a supervisor saying he lacked assertiveness in high-pressure moments. Evelyn remembered that line now. Sometimes people called restraint a weakness because they did not know what real strength looked like before it had to move. Keller stepped between Evelyn and the envelope, blocking her view of the seal. Do not start reading my partner like you know us. Evelyn's gaze returned to him. I know enough from how you are handling a citizen who asked for verification. A citizen? Keller gave a short laugh. Now you are changing the story. No, she said. You are. Revealing yours. The delivery driver near the curb whispered something under his breath. The woman with the grocery tote held her phone higher. Inside the station, another officer appeared beside Denise, then another behind him, faces gathering behind the glass like a silent jury. The welcome banner swayed slightly in the air from the lobby vents. Keller's shoulder still blocked the name, leaving only the word chief visible, clean black letters on white fabric. Evelyn saw it and thought of her father. Not the photograph in her bag, but the real man at their kitchen table in East Riverton, teaching her how to shine shoes she was not yet old enough to wear, telling her that a badge was not a crown. It was a debt. People will test what you do with power, he had told her when she graduated from the academy. But the real test is what power does to you when nobody is watching. That was why she had come early. That was why she had parked 2 blocks away and walked in alone under the misty morning sky. She wanted to know the station before the speeches, before the mayor's handshake, before the uniforms lined up and smiled for the cameras. She had expected resistance. She had expected politics. She had not expected her first lesson to happen before she reached the front door. Keller reached for the envelope, but Evelyn spoke before his fingers touched it. Do not open that unless you are prepared to log it as evidence or return it as personal property. His hand stopped. Procedure. That wordless wall rose between them, and for the first time he seemed to realize she was not guessing. You think using official language makes you important? He asked. No, Evelyn said. I think ignoring it makes you dangerous. Ellison drew a slow breath. Keller, we should call inside. Keller turned sharply. Stay out of it. The younger officer went still, but this time his eyes did not drop. Evelyn watched the small change, not courage yet, but the first crack in obedience. A radio crackled from Keller's shoulder. Dispatch asked if units at headquarters needed assistance, reporting multiple calls from citizens about a disturbance outside the station. Keller pressed the button and said, situation under control. Evelyn looked at the phones, the faces behind glass, the wet envelope, the banner with her title half hidden by the men who had decided she did not belong. No, officer, she said quietly. This is exactly what out of control looks like when it wears a uniform. At that moment, Denise Porter pushed open the lobby door from inside, her voice shaking as she called across the sidewalk, Captain Reed, you need to come out here right now. The lobby door swung open wider, and Denise Porter stood half inside the rain, one hand still gripping the handle as if the building itself had become something she needed to hold onto. Her face had gone pale beneath the fluorescent glow spilling from behind her. She was not looking at Keller. She was looking at Evelyn, and there was recognition in her eyes so clear that even the people filming from the sidewalk seemed to feel the shift. Keller noticed it too, but pride moved faster than understanding. Get back inside, Denise, he snapped. Denise did not move. Captain Reed needs to see this. I said I have it handled. No, Denise said, voice trembling but audible. You do not. The words struck Keller harder than any shout could have, because they came from someone inside his own walls. Officer Ellison took one step toward the patrol car hood, his eyes on the envelope. The mayor's office seal gleamed beneath the rain, dark ink on cream paper, official and undeniable. Evelyn watched him without turning her head. She could feel the entire morning tilting toward the truth, but truth, she knew, did not always arrive cleanly. Sometimes it had to push through ego, fear, chain of command, and a dozen people waiting for someone else to be brave first. Keller saw Ellison move and lifted a hand. "Do not touch that." Ellison stopped, but not because he agreed. His jaw tightened. "It is her property. It is part of an active investigation." Evelyn's eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, but with precision. "What crime are you investigating?" Keller looked back at her. "Suspicious behavior. Standing outside a public building. Refusing a lawful order. I asked for verification before complying with an unclear command. You argued." "I remained calm," Evelyn said. "That appears to be what bothered you." The woman with the grocery tote whispered, "That is right," and someone else murmured agreement. Keller's shoulders rose as if the crowd itself had become pressure around his neck. He turned toward them. Everyone stepped back. No one stepped closer, but no one disappeared either. The phone stayed raised. The delivery driver leaned against his van with both hands visible, eyes steady. A man in a gray suit had stopped beneath the awning of the coffee shop, watching with the uncomfortable attention of someone realizing the morning news might be happening 10 feet away. Inside the lobby, more officers gathered behind Denise. Some looked confused. Some looked embarrassed. A few looked at the banner, then at Evelyn, then at Keller, and their faces changed in pieces. Captain Samuel Reed appeared at the top of the lobby steps, tall, broad, wearing a white command shirt with gold pins at the collar. He pushed through the glass door with the careful speed of a man hoping the problem outside was smaller than it looked. "Keller," he called, "what is going on?" Keller straightened immediately, relief flashing across his face. He had found a higher uniform and thought it would save him. "Captain, this woman was attempting to enter headquarters with questionable documents and refused to follow instructions." Reed's eyes moved to Evelyn. The moment he saw her face, the relief left his body. It was subtle but total, like a light going out behind his eyes. He knew. Not from the envelope. Not from the banner. From the briefing packet every command officer had received the night before, the one with the mayor's memo and the photograph of the incoming chief attached at the top. For one breath, Captain Reed said nothing, and in that breath, Keller's story began to collapse. Evelyn turned to him. "Captain Reed." His throat worked once. "Chief Brooks." The title landed on the sidewalk like thunder without sound. Ellison closed his eyes for half a second. Denise covered her mouth. The phones in the crowd tilted higher. Keller stared at Reed, then at Evelyn, then at the banner. Behind him as the lobby door opened wider in the wind. The blocked letters finally appeared, "Welcome Chief Evelyn Brooks." Rain tapped the patrol car hood. The envelope lay between them. Keller's mouth opened, but no words came out that could put the morning back where it had been. The sidewalk outside Riverton Police Department did not erupt. That was what made the moment heavier. No one shouted in victory. No one laughed. Even the traffic at the intersection seemed to thin into a low, distant hum, leaving only the rain, the patrol lights, and Keller's silence. Captain Reed stood on the steps with the lobby bright behind him, his face locked between shock and responsibility. "Chief Brooks," he said again, this time lower, as if repeating the title might repair the damage done before it. Evelyn did not move toward him. She did not reach for the envelope. She did not correct her coat or lift her chin for the cameras. She simply stood beside the patrol car hood, the sealed appointment packet lying in the mist between her and the men who had decided she was a problem before he knew her name. Keller's eyes flicked from Reed to the banner, then to the phones pointed at him. The color in his face had changed. It was not regret yet. Regret requires the truth to enter deeper than embarrassment. What he felt first was exposure. "Captain," Keller said, forcing the words out carefully, "there may have been a misunderstanding." Evelyn looked at him then. Not sharply. Not triumphantly. Just fully. "A misunderstanding is when two people miss the same fact," she said. This was one person refusing to check any fact at all. Ellison's shoulders lowered as if the sentence had released something he had been holding since the first command. Captain Reed descended one step, then another, stopping a few feet from the hood. His eyes went to the mayor's seal. "Officer Keller, step away from the chief's property." Keller hesitated. It was less than a second, but everyone saw it. Evelyn saw Reed see it. Reed's voice hardened. "Now." Keller stepped back. The movement was small, yet it changed the entire shape of the scene. The person who had controlled the space no longer controlled it. Denise came down from the doorway with a clear plastic evidence cover from the front desk, hands trembling slightly as she approached the envelope. Evelyn gave her a quiet nod. "Thank you, Miss Porter." Denise froze for a breath, surprised that the new chief knew her name. Then her face softened in a way Evelyn would remember. "Yes, ma'am." Keller swallowed. "Chief, I did not know it was you." Evelyn let the words sit there in the rain. A bus sighed at the curb. A drop of water slid from the patrol car mirror and struck the pavement. "That is exactly the problem," she said. "You thought you needed to know who I was before deciding how to treat me." Behind the glass, several officers lowered their eyes. Some from shame. Some from fear. Some, Evelyn hoped, from recognition. Captain Reed turned toward Ellison. "Officer Ellison, did Chief Brooks request verification?" Ellison looked at Keller, then at Evelyn, then at the wet sidewalk where the morning had become a line he could not step back across. "Yes, sir," he said. His voice shook once but held. "She asked us to contact the front office and city personnel." She identified multiple ways to verify her appointment packet. Keller's jaw tightened. Reed continued. "Did you observe the city seal before this moment?" Ellison closed his eyes briefly. "Yes, sir." Keller turned on him. "Mark." Ellison did not answer him. He looked at Reed. "I should have spoken sooner." The admission moved through the crowd like wind through leaves. Evelyn studied him, not with softness, but with attention. Late truth was still late. But it was no longer silence. Reed took a slow breath. "Officer Keller, turn over your body camera and radio log access. You are relieved from street duty pending administrative review." Keller stared as if the words had been spoken in another language. "Captain, you cannot be serious." Reed's expression did not change. "I am." Keller looked at Evelyn, and for the first time, his voice lost its edge. "Chief, I was doing my job." Evelyn stepped closer, just enough that he had to meet her eyes without the patrol car between them. "No, Officer Keller. You were protecting your assumption." The rain softened. The phones kept recording. Inside the station, the welcome banner swayed gently above the lobby, no longer hidden, no longer waiting. Evelyn reached for her bag herself, lifted it from the hood, and held it at her side. Then she turned toward the open doors of the department she was about to lead, knowing every person watching had just received the first lesson of her command. The first thing Evelyn noticed inside the station was not the banner, or the polished floor, or the line of officers who had suddenly learned how to stand straighter. It was the silence. Not respectful silence. Not yet. This was the silence of a building caught looking at itself in a mirror it had not expected to face. The lobby smelled faintly of wet wool, coffee, and floor cleaner. Rainwater followed her shoes in small dark prints across the tile as she walked past the front desk, her leather bag held at her side, her appointment packet protected beneath Denise Porter's careful hands. Behind her, Captain Reed entered with Officer Ellison, while Keller remained outside with a supervisor collecting his body camera and radio access under administrative protocol. No handcuffs. No spectacle. Just consequence, clean and quiet, the kind that made excuses sound smaller. Evelyn stopped beneath the welcome banner. The full words now stretched above her in black letters, "Welcome Chief Evelyn Brooks." A few officers looked up at it, then down at her, then away. She understood their discomfort. They had prepared to greet a chief. They had not prepared to be judged by how they treated a stranger. Deputy Mayor Linda Harris arrived from the second-floor stairs, breathless but composed, wearing a navy suit and carrying the practiced smile of someone used to emergencies with cameras nearby. The smile disappeared when she saw Evelyn's face. "Chief Brooks," she said softly. "I am so sorry." Evelyn looked around the lobby before answering. For what happened outside, or for what it revealed inside? The deputy mayor had no quick reply. That was good. Quick replies often existed to close doors, and Evelyn needed this one open. Captain Reed cleared his throat. Chief, we can move the ceremony upstairs, or postpone if you prefer. Evelyn turned to him. His voice was careful, but his eyes carried something heavier than embarrassment. Fear, maybe. Not only for Keller. For the department. For himself. For every file he had signed without asking the next question. No, Evelyn said. We will not postpone. Reed blinked. Ma'am. Everyone is already here. She turned toward the officers gathering near the hallway, the front desk, the stairwell, the holding area doors, all those uniforms fixed in place by curiosity and dread. And apparently, we have already begun. The words moved through the lobby like a low bell. Evelyn walked to the center of the room and placed her bag on the front counter. Denise handed her the sealed packet. Evelyn thanked her again, then opened it with steady hands. The paper made a soft tearing sound as the seal broke. It was a small sound, but in that lobby it carried. She removed the appointment letter, the oath document, and finally the polished chief's badge in its velvet case. She did not put it on. She set it on the counter where everyone could see it, untouched, shining under the fluorescent lights. Before I wear this, she said, her voice calm enough to reach the back of the room without becoming loud, this department needs to understand what it means. No one moved. Even the deputy mayor stayed still. Evelyn let her gaze pass across the officers, not accusing all of them, but excusing none of them from responsibility. A badge is not proof that you are right. It is a promise that you will check yourself before the public has to suffer from your certainty. Ellison stood near the side wall, eyes lowered, but he did not hide. That mattered. Keller's absence mattered too. It left an empty space where his confidence had been, a space the department now had to explain. Evelyn picked up her father's photograph from her bag and placed it beside the badge. The old image showed him smiling beside a patrol car, young and proud, though Evelyn knew what that smile had cost. My father served this city for 27 years, she said. He believed in this work. He also came home some nights carrying wounds no report ever named. I am not here to punish good officers for the failures of bad ones. But I am here to end the habit of calling silence professionalism. A few faces tightened. A few softened. Captain Reed looked directly at her now. Evelyn turned to Ellison. Officer Ellison, you will submit a full written statement before noon. Yes, ma'am, he said. She turned to Reed. Captain, every open civilian complaint involving Officer Keller will be reviewed by an outside panel. His body camera footage from today is preserved immediately. His patrol authority remains suspended until that review is complete. Reed nodded. Yes, Chief. The title sounded different now. Not ceremonial. Earned by the moment, not the appointment. Evelyn finally lifted the badge from the case. The metal was cool against her palm, heavier than it looked. She held it there for one breath, remembering her father's words, a badge was not a crown. It was a debt. Then she looked toward the glass doors, where the wet sidewalk still reflected red and blue light fading in the morning rain. We will start, she said, with how we treat people when we think they have no power. And for the first time since she entered, the silence in the station changed. It was no longer avoidance. It was listening. The oath took less than 2 minutes, but it seemed to reach every corner of the building. Deputy Mayor Harris stood beside Evelyn near the front counter, one hand raised, her voice formal and measured as she read the words every chief before Evelyn had spoken. Officers lined the lobby walls. Dispatch staff watched from the hallway. Denise Porter stood behind the front desk with Evelyn's father's photograph still resting beside the open badge case. Outside, the last patrol lights faded from the wet glass doors, and the morning rain softened into a thin silver mist. Evelyn repeated each line without rushing. She felt the weight of the words pass through her, not as ceremony, but as warning. Protect. Serve. Uphold. Accountable. Words were easy to frame on walls and harder to carry into alleys, traffic stops, front porches, and moments when fear tried to disguise itself as judgment. When the oath ended, Harris offered the badge. Evelyn looked at it for one quiet second before pinning it to her coat. The metal touched the fabric above her heart, cool and bright, but she did not smile for the cameras. There were no cameras inside by her choice. No polished press moment. No staged applause. This first hour belonged to the department, and it needed truth more than theater. If this moment touched your heart, remember that real leadership does not begin when a title is given, it begins when someone chooses to protect dignity even after their own has been tested. Evelyn turned toward the assembled officers. "Return to your posts," she said. "Captain Reed, conference room in 10 minutes. Supervisors only. Officer Ellison, you will join us after your written statement is submitted." The room moved slowly at first, like people waking from a dream they were not sure they wanted to remember. Boots shifted against tile. Radios murmured. Chairs scraped. Yet no one spoke casually. The building had changed temperature. Upstairs, the conference room overlooked the avenue where the entire incident had unfolded. Evelyn stood at the window while Captain Reed, 3 lieutenants, the training sergeant, and Deputy Mayor Harris took their seats. On the table before them lay Keller's preliminary incident summary, the radio log request, a list of unresolved complaints, and the department's use of authority policy binder. Evelyn did not sit immediately. "Before we discuss Officer Keller," she said, "we discussed the environment that taught him he could act that way in front of headquarters." No one reached for coffee. Reed folded his hands. "Chief, his record should have triggered review earlier. Why did it not?" A lieutenant named Harris, no relation to the deputy mayor, shifted in his chair. Complaints were inconsistent. Witnesses did not always follow through. Evelyn turned from the window. People stop following through when they learn the system is better at waiting them out than hearing them. The room went still. She opened the binder and slid it toward the center of the table. "By Friday, I want a full audit of pedestrian stops, vehicle stops, complaints, body camera activation, and supervisory sign-offs for the last 24 months. Reed nodded. "Yes, Chief. And not just numbers. Patterns. Neighborhoods. Officers. Outcomes. I want to know who gets grace and who gets suspicion." The training sergeant wrote that down slowly. Evelyn's voice remained steady, but her hands remembered the pressure of the morning. She placed them flat on the table, visible to everyone. "We will also begin duty to intervene training next week. Not as a slide deck. Scenario-based. Recorded. Reviewed. If one officer crosses a line, the next officer does not get to call silence loyalty." Deputy Mayor Harris exhaled softly, almost in relief. Reed looked down at the incident summary. "And Keller. Administrative suspension continues. Outside review handles prior complaints. Internal affairs handles today. If the facts support termination, recommend termination." The words were clean, not cruel. Justice did not need anger to be firm. A soft knock came at the door. Denise stepped in, holding a folded note. "Chief, this was left at the front desk. From the woman who recorded outside." Evelyn opened it after Denise left. The handwriting was hurried, blue ink pressed hard into paper. "My son asked me why nobody helped sooner. I did not know what to say. Thank you for saying what he needed to hear." Evelyn read it twice. The room waited. She folded the note carefully and placed it beside the policy binder. "This," she said, touching the paper, "is the reason we start today." Outside the window, the wet street reflected the station sign in broken light. Below, officers crossed the lobby beneath the welcome banner, no longer decoration but demand. Evelyn finally sat at the head of the table, the chief's badge bright against her coat, her father's photograph in her pocket, and the city waiting beyond the glass. The department had expected a ceremony. Instead, it had received a mirror. By noon, the first video from the sidewalk had already begun spreading across Riverton. It moved from neighborhood group chats to local news desks, from a college student's page to a retired officer's feed, from quiet outrage to the kind of public pressure no department could file away in a drawer. Evelyn watched. None of it at first. She spent the next 2 hours in the conference room with binders, radio logs, complaint summaries, and the uncomfortable faces of supervisors realizing that what happened outside the station was not an isolated spark but the smoke from something older. Captain Reed sat across from her, tie loosened, sleeves rolled once at the wrist, looking less like a man defending a department and more like a man finally reading what had been in front of him for years. "There are patterns," he said quietly. Evelyn did not answer right away. She turned one complaint page, then another. Traffic stop. Dismissed. Pedestrian detention. Insufficient evidence. Courtesy violation. Unresolved. Same officer names repeating, same neighborhood circled by suspicion, same language softening harm into administrative fog. Patterns are just truth with repetition, she said. Reed looked down. A knock came at the door before he could respond. Officer Ellison entered with a written statement in his hand. He looked tired, but not from lack of sleep. He looked like someone who had spent the last hour meeting himself without a uniform to hide behind. "Chief Brooks," he said, placing the report on the table. "It is complete." Evelyn picked it up and read the first page in silence. Ellison stood still near the door, his hands clasped in front of him. The room felt smaller with the truth inside it. He had written that Evelyn requested verification multiple times. He had written that Keller saw the city seal and chose not to act on it. He had written that he, Ellison, recognized the situation was wrong before he spoke. He did not decorate his failure. He named it. Evelyn set the pages down. "Why did you wait?" Ellison swallowed. "Because I was afraid of undermining a senior officer." "And what did that fear cost?" His eyes moved to the window overlooking the sidewalk. "Your dignity, ma'am. Public trust. The example we gave that child outside." Evelyn leaned back slightly. Not satisfied. Not softened. Listening. "Do not forget the order," she said. "First it cost the citizen. Then it cost the department. Institutions often notice damage only when it reaches them." Ellison nodded. The words landing where they needed to. Reed shifted in his chair. "Chief, I should have intervened in Keller's record earlier. Those complaints reached my desk." Evelyn turned to him. "Why did they stop there?" Reed's jaw tightened. "Because I accepted explanations that made my job easier." The honesty was late, but it entered the room clean. Evelyn held his gaze. "Then your job is going to become harder." "I understand." "No," she said. "You will understand after the first community meeting." That afternoon, Evelyn ordered the department's public information office to release a short statement. The incident was under review, Officer Keller's street authority was suspended, body camera footage was preserved, and the new chief would meet with community leaders within 48 hours. She refused the phrase "unfortunate encounter." She crossed it out herself with a black pen. "Do not call harm unfortunate when a choice created it," she said. By 3 o'clock, Keller was seated in an administrative interview room, his badge and service equipment collected under protocol, his expression emptied of the certainty he had worn that morning. He tried to explain tone, crowd pressure, officer safety, incomplete information. But each explanation ran into the same wall. He had been given a way to verify and refused it. In another room, Ellison repeated his statement on record, voice steady this time. By sunset, Evelyn stood alone in her new office for the first time. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and old paper. Her nameplate sat on the desk, still wrapped in plastic. She did not unwrap it yet. Instead, she placed her father's photograph beside it and looked through the window at the street below. The same sidewalk where Keller had mistaken power for permission was now empty, washed clean by rain. But Evelyn knew streets did not remember unless people did. She touched the badge on her coat, then the photograph, and whispered the promise: not for cameras, not for the mayor, not for the officers downstairs, but for the city beyond the glass. We begin where they stopped looking. That evening, Riverton's community room filled before the meeting was scheduled to begin. Folding chairs scraped across the floor as neighbors made space for one another, pastors stood beside teachers, small business owners leaned against the back wall, and parents kept children close in the kind of room where frustration had come too many times before and left with nothing but polite minutes on paper. Evelyn arrived without a security detail, wearing the same charcoal coat, the chief's badge now pinned above her heart, and her father's photograph tucked inside her pocket. Captain Reed walked behind her with a binder of complaint files under one arm. Officer Ellison came too, not in the front, not beside leadership, but near the side wall where people could see him and decide for themselves what his presence meant. Keller was not there. His absence spoke clearly enough. When Evelyn stepped to the front, the room quieted in uneven waves. Some people folded their arms. Some lifted phones. Some stared at her with hope they did not trust yet. Evelyn understood that look. Trust was not owed because a new name sat on a door. Trust was built in receipts, in changed behavior, in what happened after everyone stopped watching. "I am not here to ask you to calm down," she began. The room shifted. That was not the opening they expected. "I am not here to tell you one incident does not represent this department. I am here because this morning showed me exactly why some of you stopped believing us." A murmur passed through the chairs, low and cautious. Evelyn let it move. She did not rush to fill the silence. A woman in the front row, the same mother from the sidewalk, stood with her son beside her. The boy held a folded paper against his chest. Evelyn recognized them immediately. The mother's voice trembled, not from fear, but from the effort of staying composed. "My son asked why nobody helped you sooner." The room went still. Evelyn looked at the boy, then back at his mother. "What did you tell him?" The mother swallowed. "I told him people get scared. But I did not like that answer." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Neither do I." The boy unfolded the paper and held it up. It was a drawing of a woman standing in front of a police station under rain clouds, with one sentence written in careful uneven letters, "Respect first." Evelyn felt the words reach through the room and settle somewhere no policy could touch by itself. If this moment touched your heart, remember that change does not begin with perfect people, it begins when someone finally refuses to pretend harm is normal. Evelyn stepped away from the small podium and spoke directly to the room. "Your child should not have had to learn that lesson from a sidewalk. So I am going to tell you what changes today." Reed opened the binder. Evelyn did not look at it yet. Every unresolved complaint involving repeated officer names will be reviewed by an outside panel. Body camera activation failures will no longer be treated as paperwork mistakes. Supervisors will be held accountable for patterns they ignore. Duty to intervene training begins next week, and every patrol unit will be evaluated on whether officers protect the public from each other when necessary. A man in the back called out, "We have heard promises before." Evelyn turned toward him. "Then do not trust the promise. Track the results." That answer quieted the room more than reassurance would have. She continued, "The complaint dashboard will be public within 30 days. Monthly community review meetings will be open. If we stop showing up, you should ask why. If we hide the numbers, you should demand them." Reed looked at her sharply, surprised by how far she had gone in public, then lowered his eyes and wrote it down. Ellison stood against the wall, absorbing each word like part of his own sentence. The mother from the sidewalk lowered the drawing slowly. "And the officer from this morning?" Evelyn did not soften the answer. "He is suspended from street duty pending outside review. If the findings support termination, I will recommend termination. If the findings support further action, I will not bury it." A long breath moved through the room. Not celebration. Not forgiveness. Something more fragile. The beginning of being heard. After the meeting, the boy approached Evelyn with his drawing. "You can keep it," he said. Evelyn crouched just enough to meet his eyes without towering over him. "Thank you. I will put it where officers can see it." He studied her badge. "Are you going to fix everything?" Evelyn's throat tightened, but she answered honestly. "No one fixes everything alone." She glanced at his mother, then at the crowded room behind him. "But we can stop walking past what is broken." The boy nodded like that made sense. Evelyn took the drawing carefully, holding it as if it were an official document. When she returned to the station later that night, the lobby was dim, the welcome banner still hanging above the front desk. She placed the child's drawing beside her father's photograph in her office, then stood back. One picture reminded her where she came from. The other reminded her who was watching what came next. By sunrise the next morning, the lobby of Riverton Police Department looked almost the same to anyone passing by from the street. The glass doors still opened with the same soft mechanical sigh. The front desk still smelled faintly of coffee and printer paper. Officers still crossed the tile floors with radios murmuring at their shoulders. But inside the building, something had shifted in a way no banner could announce. The child's drawing now sat in a simple black frame on the wall outside Evelyn's office, just below her father's photograph. Respect first. 2 words in uneven handwriting, placed where every officer heading to patrol had to pass them. Some glanced at it quickly, embarrassed by its simplicity. Others slowed down. Officer Ellison stopped in front of it for nearly a full minute before his first retraining session began, his written statement already filed, his future uncertain but no longer protected by silence. He did not ask Evelyn for forgiveness. He understood now that forgiveness was not a shortcut back to comfort. It was not owed to him because he finally told the truth. His task was smaller and harder, to become the kind of officer who would not need a second chance to do the right thing. Captain Reed arrived early with the first audit folder under his arm, the lines around his eyes deeper than the day before. "Chief," he said, standing in her doorway, "Internal Affairs confirmed the footage. The outside panel has been notified. Keller remains suspended from all field duties. The mayor's office is prepared for public release." Evelyn looked up from her desk. The plastic was finally removed from her nameplate. The badge rested on her coat, bright but not decorative. "And the prior complaints?" Reed's jaw tightened. "Worse than we admitted." "Then we admit it now." He nodded, not because it was easy, but because the room no longer allowed easy answers to sound like leadership. By noon, the department released the first statement under Evelyn's command. It did not hide behind vague words. It said an officer failed to follow verification procedure. It said supervisory review had been insufficient. It said complaints connected to repeated conduct would be reopened. It said community oversight would begin immediately. Local news called it unusual. Some officers called it too much. Evelyn called it the first honest sentence. 3 days later, Officer Keller sat before the Administrative Review Board, no patrol lights behind him, no crowd to control, no partner to lean on, only a timeline, body camera footage, witness statements, and his own words returning to him without the protection of the moment. When asked why he dismissed the city seal, ignored the request for verification, and escalated before confirming facts, he spoke about pressure, instinct, and safety. The board listened. Then Deputy Mayor Harris asked one question that emptied the room of excuses. "Would you have treated her the same way if you had known she was the chief?" Keller looked down, and the silence answered before he did. His termination recommendation was filed that afternoon. Ellison was placed on probationary review, removed from patrol temporarily, and assigned to corrective training with community accountability hours. Evelyn signed both decisions without satisfaction. Consequence was not revenge. It was repair with a record attached. A month later, the first public dashboard went live. The numbers were uncomfortable. The meeting that followed was harder. People stood and told stories the department had once reduced to case numbers. Evelyn listened to all of them. Reed listened too. Ellison sat in the back, taking notes by hand. No one in that room believed trust had been restored. But for the first time in years, some believed the door had opened. On a quiet Friday evening, Evelyn returned alone to the front steps where the morning had begun. The rain was gone now. The sidewalk was dry, washed clean but not erased. She stood beneath the station lights, looking at the place where her appointment packet had landed on the patrol car hood, where Keller's certainty had met the truth, where a child had watched a badge learn humility. Her father's words came back to her, soft as breath, "A badge is not a crown. It is a debt." Evelyn touched the badge above her heart and looked through the glass at the officers moving inside. Some would change. Some would resist. Some would leave. But the department would no longer be allowed to confuse silence with peace. That was the lesson the city had forced into daylight: kindness is not weakness, authority is not character, and respect should never begin only after someone powerful walks into the room. So tell me, if you had been standing outside that station and saw what happened before anyone knew who she was, would you have stayed quiet, recorded the truth, or stepped forward?